Hello everybody, Brad the Guitarologist here with another exciting video for you. In this video we're going to look at a couple of the things that I found recently at antique stores. One of the things I found was this. This is I don't even know what year this is. This is a Shure Model 55. This is actually specifically a Model 55AS. I did also get this mic stand with it and a cable with it. It's not in perfect condition. I'll show you. I don't know. We may even have to service this thing. If we have to service it at all, I may do kind of a restoration video on this. I don't know if we'll get into it in this video or not. But here's one thing. See, if I shake it, the insides they feel kind of loose. Also found this thing at one of our local peddlers malls or vendors malls, whatever you want to call it. This is yet another reel-to-reel machine. This is not in good shape, I will say right off the bat. I gave 20 bucks for it. It has definitely been exposed to some water at some point because it's basically all coming apart. There's the speaker. The speaker looks like it's probably intact, but you know, you can just tell it's been exposed to some water, probably stored in a basement or something at one point. So all this little cloth covering is coming off of it. This is not going to be a restore. This is going to be what kind of guitar amp can we make out of this thing? Is there a tube amp in this? I'm sure that there is. There's a speaker, so it's got internal sound. So let's pop this thing open first of all and see what kind of an amplifier is in this. Alright, so first things first, let's open it up and see what kind of mess we've gotten ourselves into. It looks like there's a couple of screws up here that are flatheads, and then we have a couple of Phillips screws here. As for the tape that's on here, it would be interesting to listen to this tape. I do have another tape machine that's already serviced. They were fairly clever in that they used these little grommets, you know, on the tape, but these are all gooey. It's like they tried to glue them on there or something. That's just stupid. So they got clever and then got stupid. That's a very common thing. You see that? Human beings are real good at doing that, aren't we? Getting clever and then getting stupid. Like I almost did right then when I almost sat this tape over there on that big magnet. Alright. There's a screw there. Aha! It's also good to get video of this sort of thing because, you know, obviously you would like to know how all this stuff goes back on. Sometimes if you don't take video of it, you're like, what screw went where? Okay, so we have four screws here. And in hindsight, it probably wasn't even necessary to take all those screws out of the top. I bet the whole thing probably just came out, with the exception of the ones on the front edge. And it's just barely holding on. Only half of it's even connected. And here's what we're looking at as far as the guts go. We have some, what is that? Variac? They look like Goodalls. These are usually, these are ceramic, and they're usually good, actually. The ones that I've seen that are encased in this ceramic like this, and it's kind of like epoxied in, these usually remain sealed pretty well, in my experience. And also all these disc caps, those are probably all good. It is a series filament amplifier. Which is not a surprise for a model that's this small. We have a 12AX7, 12AU7, a 50C5, and a 35W4. A very common, very standard sort of tube complement. This is something that we could really soup up and make awesome. There is no power transformer in this thing, hence the series filament. I'd be curious to figure out what kind of 12AX7 this is, because that 12AU I already recognize. I'll show you that one in a second. Oh yeah, that's exactly what I thought it was going to be. Beautiful, beautiful amperex ECC83. I think that means 1958. Beautiful tube. So we have an amperex 12AX7. There's my 20 bucks that I spent right there. So I spent 20 bucks on this little piece of equipment. I get an amperex 12AX7 Bugle Boy. I get a 12AU7 Bugle Boy. And I've got this nifty little tube amp. I think what I'm going to do now, actually, I'm going to pop these tubes back in here and just fire this thing up. I'll plug it into the variac and we'll fire it up slowly on the variac and just see what it does. Okay, we'll pause here for a second. We're at 64 volts on the input and we're drawing about a half an amp, which doesn't seem excessive. I've got glow on the rectifier tube, and I've got glow in the 12AU. And I've got sound. The motor's trying to go. First, I don't think it has enough juice. Secondly, I'm sure it's going to need lubrication. Oh, it's going. Messed around with this thing last night for a little while. This tape had a bunch of splits in it, and I went through and I spliced all the splits, and unfortunately I spliced them on the wrong damn side. I wasn't thinking properly last night. Actually, I've been on lower tabs because my back, I've thrown out my back somehow, probably from all the moving. So there's that. But anyway, the tape is spliced together, and I was able to listen to some stuff last night. The transport mechanism works fine. Well, I say fine. It's got a lot of wow and flutter and things. It could use a little bit of lubrication. It works well enough to be able to tell what's on the tape. Did some little things like replace the little felts just momentarily, enough to push the tape up against the head. Clean the pinch roller and the capstan. The capstan's kind of cool. It has a manual feature where if you want to change speed from 3.5 to 7, you just simply pull this out. So that's kind of cool. The record feature I have not tested yet, but it does appear that it's going to work. You press this in and put it in record mode. The play works, or it did work, up until the point where I actually broke the belt. So I had it running last night. Everything was hunky-dory. It did have kind of a tick 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 kind of sound on the when the belt was going around. And I thought that belt's probably got a spot in it. Well, it did have a spot in it, and I broke the damn thing. But this tape should be kind of interesting. I was listening to it last night, and it's got like some old bluegrass stuff on it. I don't know if it was taped off I think it was taped off the radio. But then there's other stuff that wasn't taped off the radio, obviously, that sounds like it might be, some old-time bluegrass band or person or something. And I actually have another working reel-to-reel tape player recorder that we could put the tape on if we wanted to just listen to that. But I'm going to try to get this thing working, I think. I was going to turn this into a guitar amp, and may still do that. This chassis back here is separate from the rest of the mechanism. This thing is going to require a full restoration. This isn't just let's lubricate this thing and get it working and change some caps and job's a good one. Not necessarily, because we have all of this peeling on the outside of the case. All this will have to have to be glued back down. I mean, not that it's not doable, but it's gonna require a restoration on the case as well. One thing I guess I could do is take all this covering off of it, sand it real nice, and stain it or something. I mean, I don't know how attractive the wood's gonna be, but that's one option, something I could do. But you know, I mean, the thing is, I need another reel-to-reel tape recorder player. Like, I need a hole in the head. This is mono also, so you know, in the 21st century, how useful is this thing gonna be to me? To be quite honest, probably about as useful as another little guitar amp. But at the same time, another little guitar amp would be cooler. It would be easier for me to sell. I do know that. And it would give us something to do as far as a project goes. I'm of two minds on this. I'm at the crossroads right now, because if we order the belt, then I'm pretty much committed to the restoration. If I don't order the belt, I can proceed with the guitar amp idea. So I don't know. I mean, I'm probably going to do what I do regardless of what you say, but what do you think I should do? Comment in the comments. Do you think I should leave this as a tape recorder, or should I part it out, take the amplifier, and make something cool with the amplifier? As for the brand of this is a Telectro. I don't see a model number, I just see the brand name right there, Telectro, which I've never seen before. And I think, once again, this is a late 1950s, 1958. 11th week of 1958, according to the tubes. So late 1950s, reel-to-reel mono recorder player. This is one of the smaller ones, portable. And this will only accommodate this size reel as well. If you try to go to a bigger reel, it won't accommodate it. This will only do the smaller reels. I'm going to pause the video here, I think. Give this a lot of thought. Roll this around in my mind and see what I want to do. The mechanism was working, actually, surprisingly well. Honestly, I couldn't believe it. I've rambled on long enough about this thing. I think what I'm going to do is make a decision, be decisive, and see if I want to buy a belt and invest in this thing. And if I do decide to invest in it, that means also I'm going to have to do something with this cabinet. So, Okay, before I do anything else, let's search for Telectro online. And actually, as soon as I type in Telectro, it comes up with reel-to-reel. So, according to Google, I'm not the only one searching for this thing. Let's try it. What I usually do is try image searches. That would definitely help me find my exact model. That's it right there. This says Telectro 556. So let's try that. Let's try 556 schematic. And boom, right there. Is that it? I think we may have just lucked out, unless that's like eBay. I don't want to buy one. What's that? Telectro Sonic Corporation. I wonder if that's the same company. Radio Museum will be the ones to have this, if anyone. 556 right there. Yeah, okay. All they have is an advertisement. 80 bucks, man, in 1956. Okay, so no schematic really, but I really don't need a schematic. The only reason I was looking up a schematic is because just for the hell of it, I wanted to see what kind of information there would be. We really don't need it. The amplifier is not complex or anything like that. I don't think there's really any reason I would necessarily need a schematic. It would be nice to see where the input is going, and also where the where the audio output starts. But I can trace that out actually, so not a huge deal. What I'm also thinking I might be able to do here is combine the best of both worlds. I might be able to make this into a guitar amp and also keep it as a reel-to-reel player. That might be the way to go with this. And the way I'm thinking I might be able to do it is We'll buy the belt, number one, to get the player going again. We will restore the cabinet, so it's going to need all that work done. We'll also drill a hole in the side of the cabinet and run a like an instrument shielded cable from a little jack on the side, and we'll be able to plug our guitar in. Hey, are you talking? Are you saying up? You want up, is that it? Oh goodness, I'm sorry. Alright, if there's one thing I've learned in all the time I've spent doing this sort of thing, it's that when you're ordering something, if you can, go ahead and order other parts as well from the same distributor, otherwise you're just going to be paying shipping twice. So what I'm going to do is take apart this TEAC tape recorder. This is from the 1970s. I have another video about this. I'll put as a link on the end of this video where I just kind of open it to assess what was wrong with it. It needed a belt at the time, and I didn't think I would really mess with it. I'm going to go ahead and get the belt. Since I'm getting another belt anyway, I might as well go ahead and grab this one as well. Throw it on the same shipping, and that'll save me a little bit of money. Okay, these belts came in a little earlier today, but this is the one you need for this particular model. 14 inches. Let's see, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this without taking this mechanism entirely apart. Okay, that pulley right there, that's where the belt was. And I've got to somehow get it around that, and then down in there around that big wheel at the bottom down there. Jeez, this whole thing is going to have to come apart practically to get that belt on there. And I've kind of come too far now to turn back, so alright, I really don't know if you're going to be able to see this or not, but here's this thing upside down, and there is the capstan wheel. You can see it real big in here. That's the thing I'm spinning around. That's this big wheel. The belt has to go around this big wheel on this end and then go around the pulley, which is down there, but it has to pass, somehow has to get past that piece that I'm moving, so it has to go around that somehow, and I'm not sure how I'm going to do that. The answer is not very apparent at the moment. This is to be honest, a real pain in the ass. I don't think they really ever expected anyone to change the belt much in this. I do see where the amplifier dismounts. A couple of mounts for the amp there and there on some standoffs, and then there's some other standoffs down here. I think this thing has already been off or something, maybe, because there's another standoff right here with a nut missing on this end. That should have had a nut. Alright, you guys, you can fly! I think this might have to come off, because that's what's getting in my way. That little mechanism, that little arm right there. So I'm going to have to do something about that. I'm not sure what. At this point, man, it's getting real close to me just giving up on this being a tape machine. I might set that belt aside or something for a rainy day and build an amplifier. What do you think? What do you think? Build an amplifier or get the belt on there? Because I don't... And the more time I spend sitting here going, I don't know what I want to do, Raggy, the less worth it becomes. So, like I said, I really do hate to kind of give up. That's kind of where I'm leaning at this point. Alright, well, I've come to my decision here, and it's one of the painful kind. What we're going to do here is remove the amplifier. The cabinet is in a poor state anyway, so, if we were going to restore this thing without restoring the cabinet, I wouldn't be able to sell it for anything anyway, because it's just how crappy the cabinet looks. I mean, you've got what looks like, you know, maybe some mold or something that happened down in there at one point, and it's definitely been exposed to some moisture because it's all peeling on the bottom, and it's just, you know, it's coming loose on the sides and everything else. It's just it's just not in really good shape overall. I mean, if I wanted to make this, keep this as a box, I could probably restore it enough to be a, you know, just kind of a plain Jane box. Strip this, take this covering off. So no turning back now, but you know, you see what I mean? It could still be a box, a useful something. Maybe this could be the cabinet that we build the thing in. Let's go ahead and just remove, let's remove this amp. Alright, let's sort this power. In order to sort it out, see, this is the line coming in, so it comes into here too, and all these wires are kind of mixed up. I don't know what's what, so let's remove this. Let's see what we got going here. Okay. There's our white wire, which should be our neutral. It's going on one side of our motor. It's coming out of that and going into the switch, it looks like, and then the other side's going directly to the switch. The power stuff is going to have to completely be redone. Yeah, I am going to have to definitely pull this out of there. So let's start with that. Okay, here we go with this switch and pot pulled out of the chassis here. I'm not really sure how to... Oh, it just slides off. There we go. Okay. Now this back section is the switch for the power, and this front section is your potentiometer for your volume. I've got a lead coming from over here. I think this is part of the string, because this is going through one side of this motor. Anything with an AC motor in it like this, the way they got around being able to use a series filament amplifier and have it be completely safe, even though you were touching the chassis at all times whenever you're operating it like this, is they doubled the motor as an isolation transformer. So what happens is the power comes in. This is one side of the transformer. The power comes in and it runs the motor off of this side of the transformer. But then it also has another side where the AC comes out, so you have you have an isolation there. So we are going to have to replace this transformer in some fashion with an isolation transformer. So unless we just want to hook this motor up inside the thing and let it run constantly or something, which we don't want to do, I guess we could run it as like a little AC fan or something like that. The problem I see with it is if someone opened it up and didn't realize that was a cooling fan or something, and then turned it on wanting to mess with it and ended up getting their fingers in this or something, or that could be bad. I would have to do something to kind of shield that. I have a couple isolation transformers I could use. Okay, next thing's next. We've pulled all the tubes and we're going to address this capacitor here. This is 150 volt capacitors. We have a 40, 40, a 30, and a 20. We'll just clip these wires off and replace this with some single capacitors and just squeeze them down inside of here. Alright, so the first thing we're going to have to do is remove this spring right here. In the old days they used springs like this a lot for shields for cabling, which is a fairly ingenious thing because you can kind of curl it around things, and it's It works pretty well, but we have to remove it, and it's soldered to the chassis right here. So we have to, desolder that, and then we'll clip this out. We will remove this whole switch and get rid of it. Trace the wires going to this first stage. Remove this shield as well, because we're going to introduce a different shielded cable. We'll do this in a different way, and just basically clean all of this up. Alright, I have the new electrolytics installed in this thing, and there's the other one over there for the preamp. Now we're going to turn our attention to this guy. This is the isolation transformer we're putting in this thing, according to the instructions that are handily printed on the side here. I have tied the red black and the black together, and the black yellow and black green together for the appropriate voltage. Where is it? Right there. And then the reds are the secondary. Gone ahead and pre-tinned those leads together, soldered them together, and we'll do the same with these. Alright, here's the way I usually do this. Just pre-tin your tip a little bit of your soldering iron, hold it on one side of the wire, and just touch all the way up and down on the opposite side of the wire. What's going to happen is the solder tends to go toward the heat. It runs to it like water runs down a hill, kind of. So it'll tend to go through the wire that way. And just do the same thing to this one. Okay, so here's what I have going. That variac back there, I have hooked up to a power cord here, and it is going to this isolation transformer primary. Out of the secondary, I'm hooked into the filaments and everything on this amplifier. And then coming out of this amplifier to that little speaker, it's 8 ohms, 10 watts from a TV. The input is hooked up there, which is hooked up to that guitar. So that's what we have going, and let's fire it up on the variac and let's see if let's see if it at least works. No noise yet. We're at 97 volts. I kind of would have expected something. Maybe we have to change this input right here. So let's get a okay. We'll get a screwdriver here. There we go. Okay, obviously that's not correct. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and basically rework this circuit. The first thing I can kind of see is that over here on the output transformer, this is the primary side, and one half of this is going to this this little coil right here. I know it doesn't belong really in a guitar amp. It could have something to do with recording. Let's just put it that way. So we won't need it. Let's rip it out of there. We'll also take out this switch. We won't need that. Alright, there are those two components. There's that little coil and the switch. I've removed those without prejudice. And let's go ahead and continue. What I need to do now, I think, is start building the front end of this thing. Okay, done a little bit more work on this thing. I've got an input jack here hooked up, and I had to rework the series string because it was doing some funky stuff. I had to actually smoked a resistor with the camera off, which was kind of disappointing. I wish I'd gotten that. But for whatever reason, a resistor started smoking, and then I removed that. and reworked the series string because it was hooked up in a kind of a weird way that I wasn't used to seeing on these, so I went with the way that I know. And then the other one started smoking on the other end, so something wasn't quite right. It was, and also this one was glowing white hot, and then these were off. And then I traced that back to a short that was taking place. So I tracked that down and mitigated that. So that's got us caught up. So basically what we're doing right now is we have the input is at about 112 volts back there from the variac. The output though is at 119 volts. So we're gonna have to do something. What I'll probably end up doing is flopping this around so that the primary and secondary are reversed whenever I put together the amp. That's gonna bring, you know, when the wall voltage is at maybe 122 volts or something like that, the voltage this is seeing will be about 6 or so volts less. At least I think that'll be the case. But anyway, should be right around there. And I've had that experience with these in the past where, you know, on this kind of setup, I needed to flop the primary and secondary around because they just, it was putting out too much voltage. Now, another approach I could do is come in here and the series resistor that's in the string with the filaments, I could actually add a larger resistor that would, you know, take up that additional voltage. But my thinking on this is if this is going to go inside of a case or something and be closed up, you know, I'm going to have breathing holes and stuff, but at the same time, why risk it? Why risk it getting overheating or anything like that? So let's just be on the safe side and flop that around. It makes more sense to me to do that, so that's probably what I'll end up doing. But at the moment, it's passable as an amp, I suppose. There's no ground wire, so, you know, when I lift my fingers off the strings of the guitar, you get that, you know, you get a total buzzing going on. So I have to do, you know, obviously I'll need a 3-prong cord, which I don't have. That's on fairly low volume. And you know, that's not even all the way up either right there. There's kind of all the way up. So lots of overdrive, and the reason for that is this actually has a third stage. There's only 3 stages out of these 2 preamp tubes that are working at the moment. There's the two 12AX7 stages and one of these stages that's even working. And then it goes straight to the output from there. Usually on these types of amps you get 2 stages and direct to the output. This one has that extra 2 because it was actually handling some of the preamp capabilities for the record section, so you had one half of that was taken up in that pursuit. So we will probably not use that. I think we have enough. We have probably more gain than we're going to be able to handle from this thing already, unless we stuck in like some ATs or something like that, or 2 AUs perhaps, or even swap these around and did an AU and one stage of AX or something like that, which we may experiment with. But for now, you know, it's just, I mean, even if I don't crank it all the way up and just kind of listen to the tone at lower volumes. you know, it just kind of uninspiring. There's not really much drive. There's not much clarity. It's fairly muddy. So, you know, we're going to go in here and do some tweaking on this preamp. Alright, first change I'm going to make, modification-wise, there is a shared cathode bypass capacitor. That's that orange one tucked down in there. You see it down in there. I've already clipped it out. And I did not burn that. I'm not sure how that got burned like that. Something was either hot at one time, or it was done when it was assembled. Okay, here's that cathode bypass capacitor. This is a Frocco from West Germany. So it's not what I really expected to see, to be honest. I don't know what the value is. It's burned off. But that's unusual to see. Also, these ones I said look like Goodalls, these Sarah caps. Those are from American Radionic Company Incorporated. Which I don't know if I recall seeing that or not. Yeah, I guess I probably have. I've seen this company. You're just not used to seeing this kind of stuff, at least not over here in the middle of the United States. We're not used to getting West German parts. So that's interesting. Okay, I haven't put any capacitors in here yet. I want to address something else here as well, kind of simultaneously. Going through to this final stage of the preamp, let's see. Okay, here's the plate. So the signal comes out of the plate, goes through this capacitor right here to this point, and then there's a smaller capacitor that comes over to here. I'm not sure how small that is. That's in the picofarads. So that's passing, you know, passing a lot of highs. There's some tone shaping that's going on here. We have a resistor that's coming down to here and then is connected to ground through this capacitor here. And then there's another resistor down there that's in parallel with this capacitor. So that will be, you know, this basically is doing some tone shaping, all of this stuff. That resistor, this capacitor, and this capacitor right here. I think what I want to do is delete those 4 components and just go through this capacitor over to here and then move that yellow wire right there over to this point, which goes onto the grid of this final preamp stage. Okay, so there are those 4 components out of the circuit, and that's a little bit cleaner. Now we need to move that yellow wire over. Okay, so I've sort of forged ahead here and kind of forgot I was filming, to be honest. But what I've done is those 4 components that I just removed, I put one of them back and actually changed the value to 100K because that's a grid stopping resistor. I wasn't thinking straight when I took that out. So that grid stopping resistor needs to really stay to kind of stabilize the amp. It's still a little bit unstable, so I'm probably going to add another grid stopping resistor on the second stage as well. So we'll have grid stoppers all the way through. Let's see, what else? What else do I need to do here? Actually, I may be better off. Let's see. Yeah, I may be actually better off adding a grid stopper here in the place of this wire. That might clean that up just a little bit too. So, yeah, I probably will do that. I mean, I have to do something different with that anyway. Also added a 0.68 microfarad capacitor on the first stage. I may rebias that stage. The amp is actually sounding better. But we're still not quite there, so we're going to do some more stuff to this. Let's make those couple of changes. I definitely need to put a grid stopping resistor into this final stage, so I'll replace this wire with one, and we'll see where we are in terms of oscillations and stuff. I'll show you what I mean about the oscillations. I'll go ahead and fire it up here. when you crank it all the way up, it's pretty stable until you crank it all the way up, and then right at the top of the range it goes into oscillation. So I think replacing that wire will help. Also, I forgot, also right now I have a 12AU7 in the first stage and the 12AX7 in the second stage. This is a different 12AX7, but at any rate, that's what I have going there. So yeah, so I definitely need some grid stoppers. I need to kind of tame this thing down. If I'm going to use that third stage at all, I'm definitely going to have to do something to tame it down. But I want it right. Basically what I want is for the thing to be right on the edge of going crazy all the way at the top of the range, but I don't want it to go into any kind of oscillation. So it's going to be a balancing act, and it's also going to be a balancing act in terms of tone. So yeah, I've still got a long way to go, but you know, it's still a work in progress. Okay, quickly just to catch you up where we are. We still have some oscillation at the top of the range on the volume control, and we have the resistance box out so that we can rebias the first two stages of the amplifier. So there's the top of the range basically doing what it does. I'm not sure why my phone keeps doing that. Ignore that, that's my phone. But I wanted to show you what biasing can do. There's where it stops. Now, if I get it all the way to the top of the range, I still have oscillation even with a 10K bias resistor. Okay, it looks like it stops around 220 ohms, but I think that contact is bad, so 150 is really the place where it stops. And what ends up happening at that low of a bias is that you're actually you're just losing all tone and all punch. So really one way to bias an amp if you're getting oscillation like this is to try to find the loudest point, and that's where you want to set your first stages. So you want your first stages to be slamming through as much signal as possible. So if I go through again, probably about 1.5K, I'd say, is where it seemed about the loudest. So yeah, 1.5K it is, and then what we'll do is we'll come back and rebias that third stage right there, and I think that's going to be the trick, is to kind of balance that and get that to the point where it's just on the edge of oscillation all the way at the top of the range when we bias that third stage. We also need to add a little bit of bass to this. We're still using the internal speaker on the little cabinet that this thing came with, so we're really not able to you know, to set the tone very well with just that tiny little speaker. So after this, we need to really settle on which cabinet we're going to use if we're going to voice this thing properly, because it needs to be voiced with the cabinet and the speaker that you're going to eventually use. Otherwise, you're kind of just flailing around, to be honest. So that's what the game plan is right now. We'll set to fit 1.5K on the bias resistor for these first two stages, and then we'll move to this third stage. I'm going to add a bypass capacitor on this output as well. Alright, check this out. I want to show you what kind of difference a bypass capacitor can make on the output section of an amplifier like this. Still got some oscillation at the top end of the range. I think I'm going to have to solve that with a different potentiometer, but we'll see. But listen to this. That's without a bypass capacitor. Big difference, really. A lot more bass, a lot more output, really, overall. And this is a 50 microfarad. I may experiment with a couple of values, but a 50 is probably what I'll end up putting in here. It's also worth noting that a lot of the low end would definitely be brought out a lot more if I didn't have to go through this tiny little speaker right here. We are going to change that at some point. Alright, this is going to be a fairly budget little demo here. I'm just doing it right through the camera mic. I've got my 1945 RCA Victor 12-inch speaker cabinet here. This thing has a really nice Alnico speaker. It's 4 ohms. The speaker that was in this thing was like 2.5 ohms. So if I come up with something, I don't really want to go much higher than 4 ohms, really, or I'm just going to be losing a lot of power. So I want to try to find something that's, you know, about 4 ohms. So what I was thinking I might end up doing actually is making this into a little head, so that I could use it with this as a cabinet. But anyway, we may follow the conversion of this into an amplifier combo or head or whatever in a future video. But for now, I thought I would see how far we've come with it. every now and then if you hear a little bit of a buzz like that, that's just because I don't yet have a 3-prong cord on this thing. If I got a 3-prong cord, it wouldn't do any of that stuff. So I still had a couple little things to do, but I thought I may as well go ahead and shoot this and get the video up, and then in a second video we'll follow the remaining few little things that need to be done.